everybody. My name is Alex Doyle. It's great to meet you. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit about this solo from Meyerbeer's Les Huguenots, or Huguenots, if you feel like saying it the American way. So this is probably the most important bass clarinet solo to ever happen, arguably. It's the very first bass clarinet solo in the operatic repertoire, and it also led to the widespread adoption of the bass clarinet as designed by Adolphe Sax. So our modern bass clarinet is descended from that instrument because Adolphe Sax played this solo so well on his instrument that everyone was like, we gotta have it. So I'm going to tell you mostly a little bit about preparing this excerpt either for a performance or for an audition. So first things first, you have to know the story. This is opera. I think a lot of instrumentalists don't really spend too much time thinking about plot, and we really need to when we're going to be preparing operatic parts. So this solo takes place just as our two lovers, there's always lovers in opera, Raoul and Valentine, have decided basically that their love is so strong that they would rather die together than live apart. This is a classic Romeo and Juliet story. So Raoul is a Protestant, Valentine is a Catholic, and the Protestants, the Huguenots, are basically about to be killed by a bunch of Catholics. And Valentine is like, Raoul, you should become a Catholic and live happily ever after with me. And Raoul's like, I love you, but I'm not going to do that. So Valentine decides, in a split-second decision, okay, you know what? I will convert, I'll become a Huguenot, and we will die together. Very sad, but also they're very much in love with each other. And that's where this solo happens. So it's a solo that's full of longing and, you know, the knowledge that they will never actually have a real marriage together. They do get married officially, but obviously, you know, they're not consummating it. They're not going to live for 30 years together and, you know, have a bunch of children. It's not going to happen. So this solo is about love, but it's also very much about loss. And we have to keep that in mind when we're playing it. So first things first, in this solo, you can treat the rest really freely. You can almost treat the phrases as if they had fermatas between them. You can kind of start whenever. Now take this with a grain of salt. You know, if you're doing this for an audition committee, you probably want to count the rest accurately just because they're counting the beats. But, you know, you can also take a chance on it and do it super freely like you would if you were in the opera and do whatever you want. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I've heard some people do this with vibrato. So that can be kind of fun and exciting. You know, we want to go like... just to spice things up and give it a little bit more vocal quality, because you're almost a singer when you play this in an opera, right? So it kind of works for the high G, especially if you're worried about intonation, right? So it's kind of a fragile note, so you'll want to practice it a little bit more than I have if you're going to do the vibrato, just to really gauge how big you want that vibrato to be and what speed. Make sure you plan those things ahead of time. Don't just decide in the moment to add some vibrato. Make sure you're ready to do it. Now, as far as fingerings for this high G goes, a lot of that depends on your specific bass clarinet. So you'll want to really spend some time playing around with fingerings for the high G. Now, if you haven't played a lot of bass before, you'll want to keep in mind that we don't really want to use regular altissimo fingerings on the bass clarinet. They kind of work, in my experience as a bass clarinetist. I find them unreliable and kind of stuffy. So I would do the E in your little arpeggio run with an overblown A fingering, like throat A. So that's basically just a throat A that I'm holding up. Make sure you don't leave your register key down. That gives you not the right note. So on my bass clarinet today, with my setup, I'm using thumb and register key, first finger, 1, 2, 3 on my right hand, plus the E flat pinky on my right hand to get the high G. It feels the most stable, it's pretty in tune, and it just feels good to play. But you're going to want to experiment with overblown fingerings and really, honestly, just start with a standard G fingering and then put some other fingers down and see what feels best for you. So on my bass clarinet, that feels easy to get to. It sounds pretty good. It doesn't feel like it's gonna squeak or grunt or do something weird. So you can start there, see if it works for you. But any of our standard clarinet overblown G fingerings, like honestly, to find that fingering, I just started with a regular G fingering and added fingers and subtracted fingers until I found something that felt good. So in this excerpt, I would encourage you to spend a lot of time thinking about the pickup notes. So in the first phrase and the second phrase, so we have sort of a almost inverted echo effect, right? We want to sort of lean into those A flats and sort of show the A flat, F, C motion at the end of each of these. So leading forward through those. Place those intervals very carefully. We have so many pickup notes in this, it's imperative that you think a lot about where those are going. Bottom, bottom, every time. Watch out that you're leading to the next note and not overemphasizing the pickup notes. You know, we don't want like we want leading to the G in that middle phrase, right? So in all of this, also keep in mind that we have these octave displaced, phrase and then answering phrase as well. Make sure you come up with a plan for those. For me, I like doing the first phrase like it's off in the distance. So it fits with the timbre of the instrument in that range pretty well. And then a little bit more present for the second one. Because we're leading into these really strong accented low notes, right? And then sort of the opposite structure for the two phrases after your high G. So pretty present and then a little softer. For this one, because then we have this nice and quiet leading into the louder notes at the end. Really watch out for that D flat. At least for me, that tends to be the most out of tune note in this entire excerpt or solo. So really check that with a tuner. Maybe add some extra keys on your right hand to try to control the pitch, especially at the beginning of the note. So I hope this was a helpful sort of introduction to this solo. Like I said, whether you're preparing it for an audition or an actual performance, hopefully you can take a few things away from this. If you enjoyed this video, this is part of my doctoral project on the bass clarinet in opera. So you can read a little bit more about this solo, including watch production videos and read the libretto on my website, which is alexdoyleclarinet.com. I'm also going to be posting other videos in a similar vein about other operatic bass clarinet excerpts. So stay tuned for those as well.